today's discussion is about comprehension, culture, and compassion. Okay, I came up with that because it had alliteration, and Erin liked that too. And alliteration's great. And so I'm going to tell you now at 3 o'clock that today's presentation is sponsored by the letter C. And that's about all we're going to get for Sesame Street references. I'm Jen Degenhardt. I am an adjunct teacher here at UConn Stanford. I teach 2 classes of Spanish, novice level and intermediate level, and they're my favorites. They're my favorite level. On the other days that I'm not teaching, I write some novels, some CI novels. This happens to be one of them, and I'll talk about it a little later, Secretos, and I love it. I love it. It's so much fun. I'm having such a great time and learning so much along the way from all of you. So I thank you for those of you who contacted me and let me know whether you like it, you don't like it, things are going well with reading with your students or not, but it really is fun to see my work in other people's hands, especially in students' hands. But we'll get to the books a little bit later. And how I do this, how people ask me, or somebody asked me the other day, where do you get your inspiration from to write these novels? I just pay attention, which is really bizarre because I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff. If you said what color car passed by and and who was driving, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I pay attention to people. And someone says to me, oh, you should write a story about, for example, baseball. And I think to myself, okay, baseball. I don't know anything about baseball, but I'm going to figure it out. And then I think to myself, well, who plays baseball? Okay, well, there are a lot of Dominican players. And, well, Nicaragua has a national team and and a national league, so I'm trying to work those things together into a story and include a bunch of other stuff too, the culture, because that's what we're here to talk about this afternoon, because I think that culture is really important, and I actually would argue that learning about culture is more important than learning a language to some sort of superior level. The world is getting smaller as we are super connected. Look, we're super connected this afternoon. I can't see you, which is still bizarre to me. And what was I saying? Oh, for heaven's sakes. I think if we know a little bit about cultures around the world, when we meet people who are who identify with those cultures, we can have a better conversation. I mean, in whatever language. I mean, pick one. I don't know. A student asked me today. We were taking a quiz. It was a writing quiz. It was some essay or something. I don't really know. He says, "Well, should I write it in Spanish?" And I mean, I know we get these questions. I know you get those questions too. And I'm thinking, and I said, well, Japanese would be is appropriate too, I suppose. I won't be able to read it. And that's not really what we're discussing. I mean, we're talking about college students here. So I don't want anyone to think that you are the only one suffering, because we all suffer the same thing. And if you're not yet aware, sarcasm is my 3rd language. I am very fluent in sarcasm and a little bit in French, but I'm not going to regale you with any of that today because I don't want to embarrass myself any further than I already have. I want to talk to you about infusing and embedding culture into your classes through the content of a novel. And I like to do that for you in my novels, because if there's a little bit in there, then I'm hoping that you as teachers will take it and run with it, because that's the easy part. And the other thing is if it's embedded, you can then go off into tangents. I mean, clearly I'm very good at those. And I think that once you go on these tangents, you can get other kids involved where they might not be so crazy about the language, but they might like, for example, the history of oh, I don't know, Tenochtitlan. Or they might like science, and we're going to talk a little bit about science in John Siffert's book. Where is it here? La Isla Más Peligrosa, this afternoon. So you want to try to engage kids wherever you can, have the light bulb turn on for them. I will tell you a story. A couple of years ago, this is one of my favorite stories. I had a kid, Anthony, in my class, and he was becoming a little bit belligerent in class. I mean, not really belligerent. It wasn't that bad, but he was becoming a little antsy. And I just pulled him aside after class one day and I said, dude, what gives? And he says, oh, I just really suck at Spanish. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, okay. But besides that, and, we laughed and and I gave him some pointers, because I gave him the choice. Either, you can stay in the class or you can get out. You can go to guidance and get out. And this is when I was teaching high school, and he decided he wanted to stay. And we worked it out, and which was great, because he knew a lot about history, and he could pipe in with all sorts of information where the other students were a little bit weaker. So he found his niche there, and we were able to press on. Okay, so that's enough about Anthony. He's still a great kid, love him, and because I gave him a shot, he ended up doing very well in class that year and in his other classes, which I was delighted about. Okay, sorry. See, tangent. I'm telling you, that's the way to go, because other things too is that sometimes reading is hard. I'm going to tell you, I don't like to read in Spanish. I know the irony is killer, but I don't really like to read in Spanish. So I like to be able to go off on these tangents and and follow the shiny object, so to speak. And for me, this shiny object is culture. And every year when I taught high school, I asked the students, what is culture? And I taught ninth grade. Yes, for like 12 years in a row, and my medal will be coming in the mail. They keep telling me it's coming in the mail. And anyway, so the students would tell me a culture is a way of life for a group of people who have similar beliefs and customs. They had all memorized that from the 8th grade, which is great. And even after them telling me for 12 years in a row what that was, I still I didn't memorize that. I had to write it down. Did you notice I looked at my notes? Anyway, and my answer is culture is anything that has to do with the business of life. And I know that's not very scientific nor very erudite, but we're not curing cancer here this afternoon, thank heavens, because that would be a tall order for me. Anyway, so if it has to do with the business of life, it's culture. And I think that if you are infusing culture, even if it's culture of not the Spanish-speaking region where the book takes place, that's okay. What if it has to do with one of my books, the character in Secretos, I think, and this is true too. I mean, I teach my books and I don't remember where the characters are from. I think that he is from Indiana, and I'll talk about that later on, is from Indiana. So, I mean, talking about the culture of Indiana, how is it different from where you live, where the students live? What is their experience? How is it different? I think that's just, what is it like there? Geography, what's the geography like? What's the climate like? I mean, anything that will get the kids thinking outside of themselves. And so that's why I think that culture is important. I mean, and also, I mean, even if you don't know anything else, you can always talk about the weather with people. I mean, we're famous for that, aren't we? At least here in the United States. I mean, oh, and how's the weather? I don't know. Because I don't have a window. I don't know how the weather is because I don't have a window. But evidently they're telling me that's pretty nice outside. So it's how people live. How are people living? Where do they live? Urban, suburban, rural? Okay. Can you appreciate people for where they are, for who they are? And I think that if we have more of that understanding that comprehension, that's the C, okay, the C, one of the C's being brought to you today by Sesame Street a la Jen Degenhardt. If we have more comprehension, there might be a little bit more compassion and an understanding. And, you know, in the conversation, there's another C word, conversation can come up. And I think that's a great thing. And I love to talk to people, and I really wish you guys could talk to me back. And if you have a question, by all means, please fire one away, because that part I can see. I can't see myself here, but I can see the comments. And, you know, many people have talked about this, and, you know, I'm sure there's some psychological thing, blah, blah, blah. But we're either operating on fear or love, and I'm choosing the love, and not to be too woo-woo about it, but I mean, at least love and empathy for others. You know, it might bring down, you know, that fear level, and then you can get on with the business of interacting with people, which I think is the best thing. I mean, in fact, I cannot wait till this video is over so I can go out in the street and start talking to people, because that's a little bit more comfortable than being videotaped here or recorded or whatever the new word is now. I make it seem like I'm 78,000 years old. I'm not. But let me go back to the novels, because that's what I'm here to talk about this afternoon. And I'm going to talk about my novel first, and in general, what I include for culture. It's not heavy-handed. It's dropped in there organically, and just so there's you know, it's awareness, and maybe there can be an appreciation developed by both students and teachers for what's there. Now, and if you're not into the culture, you can just breeze right through. You know, read the book, get the plot, what's going to happen, what's the action, yeah, and then be done with it. That's perfectly fine as well. But for my part, and I know for some of these other books that I'm going to talk about this afternoon, these if it's in there, it's in here already. It's like the old Prego commercial. Now I'm really dating myself. Go look it up there on YouTube, the old Prego commercial, pasta sauce. They say, it's in there, whatever you need, it's in there. The oregano, the garlic, the blah, blah, blah. So the culture, it's in here. You just have to look for it. And what I typically include, because these are things that I like, I talk about geography, at least mention some places that can be plotted on a map. I was corrected today. It was horrible. I don't even remember the example, but my geography skills of Africa, and I don't even know how that came up, were horrible. And so I'm no better than the students who are sitting in my classroom. And we talked about that. And I think that maps are important, and you know, that awareness of where people are in the world, you know, whether the map is a globe or, you know, a flat map, or turned a different way, or the North Pole is, you know, upside down, whatever. I'm not, but I just think it's important to know where things are. So I include places. I also include some topography if I can, if it's pertinent to the story, because I think that affects and influences the way people live. And so I like to put that in there. You know, a story written about Hawaii is going to be very different from a story written on the top of a volcano. You know, that's not in Hawaii. A volcano, it's not in Hawaii. Okay, I know that Hawaii has volcanoes. Also, I include food because, because everybody loves food. I mean, if you don't love food, I'm not really sure that we should be having this conversation together. Anyway, so I include food, and I include some pop culture too, some things that kids can grab onto, and so that they can talk about. Because really what I want for my students, and hopefully you want for yours as well, is so that they'll actually speak. And if they get some culture in along the way, that's fantastic. Music. You know, anything that has to do with Snapchatting or texting or any technology. Okay, yeah, I know. Again, the irony. I don't include that much technology because I don't really know a lot about it. Okay, my computer turns on automatically, thank heavens. A little bit of history, not heavy-handed, because I want you as the teacher to either present that, or for the student to do the research themselves, because I'm not the expert in the history. I drop in some things here and there, just so you have an idea. Region-specific elements, places, brands in, for example, in Guatemala, brands in Colombia, or regional language. I use the voceo is used in this book, because that's how they speak in Argentina, with the voceo. Now, I don't use the voceo when I speak, but it seemed to me a little bit more authentic, so I wanted to include that. So how do you go about finding the culture in the book? Well, you have to read the book, okay? And I did that for the 4 books that I'm going to talk about, and it's easy. Just take note of whatever pops in your mind. Remember, culture can be anything. If you make the rules, nobody can argue with you, okay? So note the following, and here we go back to the question words. Who's there? Are there characters? What is their culture? Are there artists? Are there historical figures? What's in there? What foods? What pop culture? What names are there? Names of or brand names, kinds of things, clothing that's worn, stuff like that. The where, the places, the region. Just take broad notes. We're not making a very detailed list here, because I have to tell you, I don't do a lot of the work. I make the students do the work. And if I can give you any advice this afternoon, I would make your students do the work too. You don't have to be the expert on everything, because especially if you're doing FVR, you can't be the expert on every single book. And when, the time period, when does it take place? And that will influence the culture of the characters, okay? Then from the list that you generate, which is what I did for my books and for the other books of other authors that I'm going to talk about today, you can generate a timeline where it would be a good idea to divert yourself from the story. When do you need a break? Okay, I always take a break when I'm finding that the students are a little bored. Or I did in high school, and the college level is a little bit different, because we don't have that much time, and we gotta zip through the book a little bit more quickly. So where's a good time? Friday afternoons, always a great time to Friday afternoon is always a fantastic time to plan a diversion. Help you?
Unit.
I'm sorry? Okay, at what time?
3:30.
Okay, I'll be done by then. Okay, thank you. Well, that's what you get for not checking ahead. So I'm going to be done in 5 minutes, because I got to get out of here in 5 minutes. It figures. Okay, so you can create sort of a map to put yourself to a plan. I always think the visual I have in my head is a Candyland board. So where do you want to stop off? Where do you want to stop on candy? Because that will help with the keeping the students engaged. Okay, let me go right to the books, and I won't talk a lot about mine. So this deals with LGBTQ issues. One of the main characters is a trans boy. And so that has a lot to do, or the culture has a lot to do with that. And also the other character lives in Argentina, and she is involved in some family history regarding the Argentine Dirty War. Okay, and there's some music in here, music by LGBTQ artists, and places, and there's a lot of geography in and around Buenos Aires. In El Último Viaje de A.C. Quintero, her book is chock full of a whole bunch of stuff for culture that can be used. And I learned a lot when I read this book. I learned about the geography and the topography, and I was able to plot places in the map in Colombia, in Barranquilla, in Cali, in Medellin. Also, the character travels to Spain, so in Mallorca, in Ibiza. She talks about the regional industry, the fashion and flowers, technology, and yes, even the industry of the illegal drug trade. So there's lots of opportunities for conversation, and I find that students really like to talk about the culture more than language. I mean, that's what we're not CI. We're not talking about the language anyway. Let's just talk about other stuff. She also references the history of the Civil War in Colombia. She mentions famous and infamous people. Famous people: Vanessa Mendoza, who is a Black beauty queen; Butero, who's an artist; Shakira, who is a cantante, a singer, and she mentions also Pablo Escobar of ill repute. Colombian national systems and civics, the EPS, the Entidades Promotoras de Salud. So there's a chance to talk about what goes on in Colombia with the health system there. She talks about food. She talks about relationships between men and women. She talks about places, the Museo de Antioquia, and music, salsa, cumbia, vallenato. I mean, you could spend, if I knew anything about music, I would spend lots of time talking about music, because music is a great language. It's another language altogether, right? So that's what you can find in this book. Okay, in this new book, that was level 3, by the way. We're going down, because usually you start from level 4 to level 1. Level 3, level 2, Caras Vemos, is by Teresa Jensen, and this is a great book. It's a mystery, and it takes place in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and places in and around there. She talks about the climate there. She mentions brands, use of technology, daily activities. You can talk all about the church attendance, people going to the gym, physical characteristics of people, which may be different. That's another part of culture. Customs she discusses. I mean, it's great, and it's a mystery, and it was a little too hard for me to figure out, but she's got some really great instructions on how to solve even a bigger mystery within the book itself. So kudos to Teresa for writing such a fantastic book. But culture-wise, it was chock full of stuff, and including map skills and regional vocabulary. Hold on, I dropped this book. And I was so sorely interrupted, excuse me. And La Isla Más Peligrosa. And you would think that maybe there wouldn't be a lot of culture in a level 1 book. There's totally culture in this book, okay? The geography of the place where it takes place, where the family's from. The family in the book is from Iowa. They're traveling to Uruguay. The action takes place on an island. What's the culture of an island? That's different from here in suburbia. Okay, it mentions some things about science, about venom and its effects, the use of a fulcrum. Okay, I'm pretty proud that I know what that is. So flying, airplane flying and flying safety, climate and global warming. You don't have to talk about these things in great depth, because at a level 1, you're not going to be able to, but you can mention something about the environment, in novice Spanish. Okay, it talks about themes of immigration and terrorism. It discusses industry and the environment, the flora and the fauna of the area, which is great. I mean, and again, it's not, you can discuss these things and go on tangents, and your students love it when you go on a tangent. Okay, culture of appearance of people. There are people in the characters in this book who have tattoos, different hair color, different physical characteristics. There's mention of gangs and survival. What's the culture of gangs and survival? The stereotypes are mentioned in this book as well. This is a great level 1 read for those looking for an action-packed book. It's a page turner, even with 200 new unique words. So I would check this one out as well, and let the students talk. They love to talk, but just give them the tools and the ideas in which to talk about. Okay. All right. So I have exactly 1 minute before maybe this professor will be late. But anyway, I hope you got some information on how to incorporate some culture, and the why behind the culture, because it's all about the people. It's all about, if we're going to learn about something, it should be about people, because that's what language is all about too. So culture will bridge that gap and create some conversation for that to happen. That was a really poorly done sentence, but I think you get the idea. And if there's something I've forgotten, and I apologize, I probably could have blathered on a little bit more slowly, but I didn't. And if there's something I've forgotten, and you know what, and I didn't cuss while I was doing this, so I'm giving myself a gold star. So if there's something I've forgotten, or if there's a question or a comment, hopefully it's positive. And if, oh, I got 3 comments here that I didn't address, but I will. Okay. Oh, Martha Cox, thank you. Tangents are sometimes my best moments in class. Yes. Okay, so contact me through social media. They'll all be posted on this page. Okay, thanks so much, and I will see you soon.